And my name is Mike Blinder, and I want to cordially welcome you to our another in what we're finding to be well-attended and fun and hopefully informative and worth the next 60 minutes of your time, E&P Reports Webinar series. And what we're doing today is we're talking obits. But before we get into our panel and introduce them and all that, I'd like to run a little housekeeping, if I may, since I'm allowed, I guess, since I'm running the show here. First of all, we're obviously using a platform I know you're familiar with called Zoom. Who heard of Zoom a year and 6 months ago? Now everybody knows Zoom. We're not going to be watching the hand raising on the bottom of your screen, and we're not going to be watching the Q&A on the bottom of your screen. We're going to be watching the chat. And I've asked all of my panelists to keep their eyes on it as well, so will I. And hopefully you will as well. Feel free to bring up the window right now. But here's the thing I want you to notice. It will default to a message only to the panelists if you want to type a message just to the people who will be speaking on the topic today. I'm urging the panel as well as you, the attendees today, to do me a favor and make sure you're doing messages to everyone. And the reason I want you to do that, the panelists and attendees, so we can have a lively dialogue and conversation. I'm asking my panelists also to walk and chew gum at the same time, because while I'm doing the interview and the dialogue with them, I'm going to try to have them keep an eye on it. If you ask a specific question that maybe Deb or Bruce or anyone can answer, or Eric or whatever, even me, we'll try to type it back, but type it up to the entire group. Links could be provided as well, anything we can to support it. So let's get right to work and bring in my panel. I got most of them showing their faces here. There we are. Welcome, guys. It's so good to have you here today. What I'm going to do now is stop my screen share, and I'm going to change the view for everybody who is now watching to a different view if I can. What I'm going to try to do, if I remember how to do this, is make it what I like to call the Brady Bunch view. That way, as we record this, we're all on the same screen. So let me welcome our esteemed panel today that we discuss making money with Obits. We're also going to be doing that on behalf of our great sponsor today, and of course, that is Adpay. But first, let me introduce our sponsor. Let me bring in Deb. Deb, how are you today? Deb, I don't know if there's anyone in the industry that does not know you. You've been with Adpay now for, well, I should say with the Adpay just for a few years, but the actual platform you've been working with for over a decade. Is that correct?
That is true. That is true. I am kind of the face of Adpay Memoriams.
Talk about it. What is the product? And why are we focusing on that today? Just give me a quick background on what Memoriams is for those that doesn't understand how we're centering these two case studies around the platform.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Mike, for hosting today. And thank you so much to our partners for participating in the panel. We really have only grown and succeeded because of people like you, and we really appreciate it. So as for Memoriams, it is the nation's only obituary network for placement, both locally and out of area in a single order. And it was created to truly help families and funeral directors on this most difficult day. Typically, families do need obituaries in multiple markets, and prior to Memoriams, it was very difficult to accomplish this. And so a lot of those obits were often lost to the newspaper industry. So not only do we increase revenue locally for orders, we really have streamlined that ability to provide additional obits to the industry as a whole. And perhaps the best part is that, and I know folks like Eric and Bruce and Greg really appreciate this, it is a no-cost solution to the publishers and for the funeral homes. And as part of what we offer, there's also a beautiful memorial, perpetual memorial from Ancestry as part of the placement, and that's baked in. And we even have a vendor agnostic attitude towards search as well as our own search platform. So it really is a full suite, and has been generating great success.
And there's a lot of media companies participating already in this network, correct? It's nationwide at this time.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's over 3,300 newspapers and actually even some television stations and public radio platforms that are part of the network, specialty publications, um, ethnic publications. So it is not just something for traditional newspapers, but it's something for any media company that really wants to get into the space of helping families communicate the
Let's
obituary.
since we mentioned media companies, let's bring in our media companies. Bruce Potter, what city are you coming to us from, and what do you do for the company that you represent, sir?
Hi, Mike and Deb and everybody. Delighted to be able to participate this morning. Thank you for putting this on. I am a publisher of a company called InsideNoVA. We are just outside of Washington, D.C., in the suburbs of our nation's capital in Northern Virginia. And we publish a group of weekly newspapers. We publish some monthly community lifestyle magazines, and we have a couple of we have one regional news website and a couple of other niche websites. So kind of a combination of products, all of which provide local news just outside the nation's capital.
And again, your title, your position there, Bruce.
Publisher of InsideNoVA, and then Chief Operating Officer of we're a locally owned company, but Chief Operating Officer of the parent company.
All right, cool. And just quickly, size of your operation, how many people, what's your circ? Give us the quick, like, one paragraph you'd put up in LinkedIn about it. I mean, what do you got?
We have about 25 full and part-time employees. We're scattered across a number of different offices, and these days a number of different homes.
Of course.
Our largest circulation paper is 23,000 in Prince William County, Virginia. Our smallest is 2,000 or 2,500 out in Rappahannock County.
Eric, we're now going to the other side of the country, right? You got up early for us this morning. I want to thank you for that. Quickly, can you give us the same description of the media company you represent, your position, footprint of the company, all that and more?
Sure. So thanks, Mike, and I appreciate being here. So I'm the president of the Western Division for the Adams Publishing Group, which is a national, privately owned, family-owned, group of community publications across the United States, from Florida to Maryland, Washington, Oregon, Utah, and everywhere, kind of everywhere in between. I oversee specifically the Northwest United States, so everything west of the Rocky Mountains: Wyoming, Utah, Montana, Oregon, Idaho, and Washington. So we've got a footprint. We've got, again, community newspapers in cities all across the company. Some of our largest in places like Florida, Boise, Idaho, and then we've got small paper publications through Minnesota, Wisconsin, and all through the kind of the plains and the Eastern Seaboard.
Excellent, excellent. Now, what I'm honored most, I'm so glad to have all of you here, but Greg, this is a first for us. We spend a lot of time at E&P dissecting the different ways that we serve our customers in the media industry. And those customers are, one, our audiences. We're going to talk about that in a moment, but two, it's our advertisers. And we have not, in any of these webinars, actually had an advertiser on. Deb, I want to thank you for inviting Greg Hall. Greg, what city are you in, and what is your position in the company that you work with, sir?
Coming to you from Marietta, Georgia.
Okay.
I'm location manager of Georgia Memorial Park Funeral Home.
How large is that company? How big is the operation? And then when in your market, I mean, you're in Marietta, I know the city, but kind of give us an idea of the scope of the company you work for.
Okay, well, Marietta obviously is a northern suburb of Atlanta, so it's large city. And funeral home here, we serve an average of about anywhere from 400 to 500 families a year.
Okay, for decades now, I should say more than decades, for over a century, we've been, as an industry, a place where people put important information. When I say we, editor and publisher magazine is called the Bible of the newspaper industry. We've been around since 1884. I've only had it for a year and a half, but newspapers have been a place where people wanted to see birth announcements, business advancements, and of course, obituaries. It's been critical content for communities. It's been that place where people went. But somehow that's changed, obviously, in a very digital world. How important are obits to the readership, Bruce, of your operation? In your humble opinion, you're running this thing. It's a community newspaper group, and how important do you think that content is?
It's critically important. In fact, when we started a weekly newspaper, the weekly paper in Prince William County, 7-8 years ago, one of the first questions that we got from the public was, "Are you going to have obituaries?" The daily paper in the community had closed, and that was the first thing that the readership missed, was the obits. So they're critically important. They're always one of the most read things on our websites. And obviously they are well read in the paper as well. And even today, I think they continue to be very well read in print.
Let me ask you a question. And we're in a world where everybody's debating reader revenue. Do we charge for access? Do we lock our websites down? Do we keep them open? At your company, are your digital pages open, metered? Are they paywalled? And where are your obits in that wacky world right now?
We do not have, we're entirely free online. So the obits, of course, are free as well.
So your obits, I mean, I've been in this industry for 20 years. I helped launch the first digital sites for some newspaper groups. It was always a very high traffic part of the website, right? And we always just saw, it was amazing when someone would see that there was. So I'm assuming that that's one of your highly trafficked pages that you're on your sites right now.
It is. It typically ranks among the, if you sort of organize it by category, obituaries rank among the top 10 consistently.
Our people pages at E&P and our obits pages are very high as well. Eric, same question to you. I know Adams. Obviously, I'm a good friend of your CEO and I've worked with your company, but just for our audience sake, tell us how important that audience is to you and what is the Adams philosophy of having that content metered, paywalled, or wide open, or is it all over the place right now?
Sure. The content is really important. And I think it's important from a couple of aspects. One, for just the reader and the community involvement. People want to know what's going on. It's as important as many other things in the newspaper. But I think historically, it adds an important element to the communities that we serve, much like legal notices do, for example, where it's kind of publication of record that's showing the historical passing of those residents. Without publication of obituaries in the newspaper, I think it kind of I don't want to say it delegitimizes, but it certainly, takes away some of that historical permanence of those people who lived in the community. So I think we have an important role to play in that regard. The part you'd asked about the paywalls, we think it is valuable content. We have a number of our publications that currently have obituaries behind paywalls. All of our publications at APG are behind subscription-based paywalls. Some of them have obituaries behind the paywall. Other ones have them in front of the paywall. We're in the process now in working with Adpay and our partners to put all of our obituaries behind the paywall. We believe that it is valuable content, that it is something that, if you buy an obituary, to read it, generally you would have to subscribe to the newspaper or buy a copy of the newspaper. So we believe that philosophy applies online, where we'll offer you a day pass, we'll offer you a special, but we're going to require payment or subscription to access that content online. And that's coming within the next couple of months across APG.
All right, Greg. Now, technically, Greg, you would be an advertiser. I know you don't. We don't. You're actually in an industry that's very important to us, but you place ads in media for families at a very, very critical time. I just went through the passing of my father in the last few years, and he passed here in Florida, where we took care of him. He was a dentist for 60 years back in suburban Philadelphia, and the place I worked with up there helped get that message out. And you would be, I'm sure you wouldn't be surprised. We had 30 or 40 people I had no idea to attend the funeral that came from the years of knowing my father. It's how important is obits to you in your industry and getting the message out through the various media channels, Greg?
It's very important. Again, you just talked about it. It has the historical factor, but for the immediate need, it's one of these. It's a situation where you're reaching people that still sit down every day, and whether it's in print or if it's online, they are looking through to see. Some of us look to make sure we're not there, but people go through and see. It's news. It's what's going on, and it's a way to get the word out that someone has passed away.
How valuable is that to the families that you kind of take care of everything? I mean, I know personally that I had no urge to do anything but speak to one person at that time, and that person held my hand through the entire process brilliantly. But I'm hoping you're saying to me that it's a service you're providing, correct? That people expect you to have.
Absolutely, and we don't, and on my side, we don't charge for that. So as we place an obit in a newspaper,
Wow.
whatever the newspaper charge is what we pass along. We don't add anything to that. It's invaluable to a family to be able to get the information out in a very quick, a very decisive manner that, people can see that they don't have to remember who they need to get in contact with. Now, granted, there's going to be, some special people that they're going to know to contact, but for, just general purposes, they don't have to remember that, Dad he was a member of the Kiwanis Club, and I don't know how to get a hold of the Kiwanis Club, so I'm just, I'm going to rely on the newspaper to take care of that for me.
Deb, full disclosure, you and I knew each other for the last 25 years. We worked at a company together in the dark ages of the internet. And I want to give you a compliment. I look old and fat now, and you look younger. I want you to know that, since you and I go way back. But you have been part of this essential part of the industry for now almost 20 years, or 20 years plus, I should say. What has happened? It used to be a print thing. Here comes this digital thing. Then there's these vertical things that disrupted everything. Where is it today? How important is the digital side versus the print side? And how it's important that these ads are not just placed in one place, but can be found by a network? Do you follow my logic of give us the overview, at least in your opinion, because I would consider you an industry expert at this vertical. Let's go ahead.
Well, thanks, Mike. I think that all of our partners on the call today would agree that the digital component has become equally important. I think particularly for Bruce. Bruce uses our search and display, and what that provides for him as a weekly publisher is the immediacy of the obit being online as soon as it is presented. So it takes a weekly publisher and makes them extremely relevant in the dissemination of the information, because their community knows that they can come to their website. And frankly, that also generates great traffic for Bruce to be able to get new folks coming back to their websites. Also, from Eric's perspective, they have many weeklies in Adams that are using this as too. And so it, again, generates that relevance. But the digital component also is something that is historical too. It is perpetual. So it allows for people to come back. The content is going to be available forever, or at least as long as forever is for us. And I think that that's something that is important to Greg when he's presenting it to the families too. So digital and print are really hand in hand, as well as the social sharing component of all of our digital We Remember modules, because families are then able to easily and for free just share them to any other place that they want this to be, whether it's on their own Facebook pages, or if it's on the Facebook page of a particular community that the loved one might have been involved with.
Bruce, how long have you been the CEO of this company? Just 1 year, 5 years? How long have you been doing that?
In the current iteration, about 3 years, but under prior ownership, it's going on 8 years now.
What was your original obit strategy, and what made you want to get part of a larger network? Have you always been doing this network thing with this, where you're placing where the ads are automatically being placed? Did you have like your own little private site before, or what were you doing, and what was your evolution through this, if I may ask?
Sure. So I actually went back and looked, and we first started using memoriams in 2013. And was when Deb and I first connected. And at the time, again, being in the Washington suburbs, the Washington Post is the 800-pound gorilla in this market. Yes. as the big daily newspaper. So that's kind of the default when somebody passes away, is they get their obit in the Washington Post, which of course, and so with our local weekly papers, we didn't get a lot of obits. Because people just kind of defaulted toward the Post, and the paper only came out weekly. And so, by the time the paper came out, the service may have been over. And so for us, memoriams was a way to, we felt like the obits were important from a readership standpoint for these newspapers, which, you know, provided so many other aspects of community news. So for us, memoriams was a way to start to work with the funeral homes to get the obits in our weekly papers without a lot of extra work on the part of the funeral home. You know, they could, you know, we weren't asking them to call us and dictate an obit over the phone. We weren't asking them to email us an obit or fax us an obit or something like that. You know, the memoriams process made it simple and seamless from the funeral home standpoint, so that they started placing the obits with us. So, you know, really the strategy was quite simple: get some obits.
Because
you
it's
know, and
again, it's content craved by
yeah.
your readership. Eric, your evolution. I mean, how long have you been in the industry, and how did you treat this before, and how are you treating it now, and why is this network important to you and Adams right now?
So that's a good question. So I've been in the industry for almost 35 years, and I've been doing digital development since the middle of the late 1990s, 96, 97. And I think Deb and I first connected probably in the early part of the 21st century, back in like 2001 or two, talking about Adpay stuff. And at the time, obituaries were really, at least for us, the digital component was a customer service feature, make it easier for people to place the obit. We had these arcane front end systems that wouldn't necessarily allow digital placement of obituaries. And we kind of had to jump through a lot of hoops to get them, at the time, into the core element, the core product, which was the newspaper. And so we use digital as, I would say, kind of an afterthought to that. We use digital as a tool to empower people to place their own obituaries. And at the time, everybody probably remembers, there was a real rush towards digital placement of obituaries, because they would generally go up by 30%, because people got really long-winded when they talk about their grandma or their mom or whatever. And so they would spend more time and more words. And so that was great. And that was probably, again, early 2000s. What we've evolved to since with the network through memoriams, and this is really the value proposition for us, is with those 3,300 publications in there, we know that in markets like ours at Adams, we have markets where people are from. So people are from Mount Vernon, Washington, and Bozeman, Montana, and Eau Claire, Wisconsin. They may live in Chicago or Dallas or Marietta, Georgia, but they're from Pocatello. So the network of memoriams allows somebody who's sitting in Greg's office to say, my mom was born in Pocatello, Idaho. I'd like the obit to be run in the newspaper here in Marietta, but I'd also like to be placed in Pocatello, Idaho. And it's quite literally one click and done. And we've seen a substantial kind of organic increase in obituary revenue and placement as a result of that network. So that's been a really beneficial evolution for us as a memoriams partner just in the last couple of years. And that's why we're moving all of our APG publications onto the memoriams platform as we speak. I think we're 75% of the way there as right now.
All right, Greg. So with this circles now back to you, who is dealing with, at a very critical time with the family. How often does the family understand that thanks to this thing called the digital world, that they can use you as the one-stop place where they could send that, obviously locally to your community, but where the person was brought up or the previous town they lived in? Is that something that is a benefit to the people who come to you at this period?
Absolutely, it is a huge benefit. I'm currently working with two families right now. One is everything's local. The family is all local. She was born, raised, worked, lived in this area. We're going to place the ad locally. The other family I'm working with, she worked in several different cities, was from Massachusetts, Connecticut. So there's 3 newspapers in areas where she lived that when I sat down with the family, we sat down and I showed them on one screen what it would look like in all 3 of those newspapers. I showed them what the cost would be in all 3 of those newspapers, and they were overjoyed that they not only was it done with one click, it was sent done, and they didn't have to worry about it. If they think they were pleased with it, I'm the one that I don't have to go look up fax numbers, and I don't have to call, and I don't have to either dictate or type an obit. See, they email me the obit. I just copy, paste, click, and it's all done.
Is this easy? I mean, it sounds a little nerdy and geeky to me. Do you have to go through massive training, Greg, to be able to use this thing that allows you to say, show the family, which towns would you like me to send this ad to? Or is it simple?
It's beyond simple. There's drop downs for, what states, and you drop down for a city, and it shows you the newspapers that are in that city. You click on it, it pulls up. You copy paste everything in. If you're putting a photo, you attach the photo, and it literally takes it and shows it in their format. It is the newspaper format, so that you can actually see what that obit is going to look like in the paper. It's beyond easy.
All right, Deb, help me with this now, because full disclosure, you advertise with editor and publisher. We have ads currently running in E&P, and one of the
best ads ever.
Thank you, and I'll pay you a royalty for that. But here's what I need to say.
That sounded a little.
One of the headlines, and I'm still trying to grasp this, because remember, I didn't work in verticals. I was a display ad guy, and a digital sales guy. But in this vertical, and how this is all going down, your lead line is don't compete with your funeral homes. Would you explain that? How is there a competition that has been now made easier for the entire value proposition, from the family to Greg to the media industry in general? I mean, just explain it to someone who doesn't understand all the nuances of how the relationship is.
Well, I don't want to be presumptuous to the point of speaking to Greg's business models and the like, but
in general.
Funeral homes businesses have been severely impacted in this last year by a disruption to their business, a change in traditional funerals, and then there's been an enormous change relative to these traditional funerals becoming cremations. And as such, the important services that are offered by our funeral home partners are being impacted. And one of the areas that I'm sure Greg can speak to that's important to them are their own floral sales. So the We Remember memorial that's generated with every obituary also has a send flowers link that goes directly to Greg's vendor of choice. And so we are not out there selling flowers competitively to their needs to have this be an important revenue line for them. We are directing families, friends, etc., to the funeral homes vendor fulfillment URL of choice, so that they are continuing to have the lion's share of those revenues from floral sales.
Greg, is that, I know we're discussing a very, very sensitive time in your customer's life, but business is still business. How is it important that you maintain those local relationships with these other vendors that are involved in the entire process? Is this something that a benefit to you?
Very, very important. I mean, it's keeping us in our community. We're supporting our local vendors, and just like we hope they support us. And the flower component we track on a monthly basis as to what we do, and that's easily done. We see what kind of web traffic and different things like that this brings in. So it is a very valuable product for us to be able to do all of that.
So in other words, rather than some programmatic ad, Deb, you know where I'm going with this, for 1-800-Flowers that pops up indiscriminately around this, Deb's environment or this memoriam's environment controls the entire process. So it's a win-win on the local level, benefiting the local businesses of the area. All right, Bruce, let's circle back to your company now. How good are you? And this is not, I'm not being accusatory or anything. And by the way, I want to thank everyone who's in our chat room right now. Please feel free to start asking questions, or because some are asking Deb questions, some can ask others, but by all means, get in there and ask anything that we're not doing right here to get that information across. But Bruce, how good are you at telling the local funeral homes in your area about this benefit. This is something I'm finding in our industry. It's always been automatic business to our industry where we haven't really gone out and represented or are you doing that? Are you out there trying to make sure that you're letting them know the benefit of the system?
We are, when we launched it and then subsequently, when we merged with another company and picked up a couple other papers and launched in those markets, we actually, myself and the local publisher went out and met with each of the funeral homes and just kind of gave them an overview of what memoriams was all about and how to get the obits in the paper and online and what the benefits were. And I would say that memoriams does a good job of providing us with, sales sheets, marketing kits. They will do email blasts to the funeral homes, letting them know about the product and the service. So that relationship between memoriams and the funeral home, also benefits us. Could we do more? Sure. But there's only so many hours in a day. So, but we have tried to go out there and meet with a lot of the funeral homes to kind of introduce them. And generally speaking, the reception is very positive. They get it. They see the benefit. They appreciate that option.
All right. So let me ask you, Eric. I asked Deb when we were, formulating how we were going to do this case study, that to make sure she could get someone from a smaller operation and see if she can get one of her big dogs. Adams is a big operation right now. You're in a company with hundreds and hundreds of newspapers. Is this something that you guys are focusing on? Are you like trying to make sure that the local funeral homes in each market understand the benefit of using this network? Or is it something that, give us an idea of how you're maintaining those relationships at Adams?
Sure. I think what memoriams has helped us do is kind of change the dynamic. I remember it wasn't so long ago that anytime we talked about changing obituaries, the conversation always leaned toward the funeral home directors are going to be so angry about this or that or the other thing. And now with the network and with the platform, we're actually able to engage them in a conversation that says, this is how you can actually, kind of like Greg alluded to, this is how we can help you do for your customers better what you need to do for your customers. And so we really do work with Adpay to engage those funeral homes. And I'll say that as we've rolled this out across the country in our markets, the process has been such that it scales very well to, we're a lot of publications, but we're small community publications. And so the importance really is there. There's one funeral home director, there's 2 or 3 in a town, there's not 15. So we really have to keep those relationships active. Adpay has helped us do that. And, to the extent, pre-COVID, they would come out to the market, they would engage in the meetings, they would have the conversations, do the training. I think all of that is still moved through, even though we're kind of travel restricted and things like that. They're still able to help us build those relationships and maintain and strengthen them with the funeral homes and the funeral home directors, such that it creates that great partnership. The majority of our obituaries in our markets are placed from funeral homes. We don't have a ton of private party, and that's different than other markets I've worked in the past. Most of them come from the funeral homes. And so it's a really important relationship. And this has been a tool to help us help them, which has worked really well. It's been a win-win for everybody.
Bruce, do you have a lot of private party, or is it the similar story in your market? Most of the business placed through the funeral homes.
We actually have a fair amount of private party. A lot of it is from out of town sometimes, but people who are from the area and have moved away. But I would say we have a fair amount, relative to what we have from funeral homes, we have a fair amount of private party. And again, this is, we just adopted the online component of this for private party within the last few months. And so, we have a direct link on our website that anybody can go and place an obit. And it works right through the memoriam system, just like a funeral home.
Deb, I see you're typing away in our chat room about how you evangelize the system to the funeral industry.
I'm answering questions.
Well, this is cool, but why don't you just, I find it fascinating. You guys at Adpay have a lot of customers to service. You've got the media company customers, but you also have the funeral home customers. That's hard because you have different messaging you have to do to the different sides. How do you do that? What are the systems you do to get the message out that this is it's a win-win, it's beneficial, not just making sales, but this helps everything? How do you do that?
Well, first of all, it's not hard. It's easy because we have a phenomenal team at Adpay, and Spencer Hines, our product manager, just has an incredible relationship also with our media partners, and just has been an exceptional trainer, and I so appreciate working with him and all of our team, Melissa Clark and her folks on our implementation side. But it is really important to recognize that funeral directors like Greg are critical to our success, because we're really built on helping them. Memoriams was originally envisioned because we did research. We started as a classified advertising provider at Adpay, and so we thought, well, we could take our classified ad tool and repurpose that and insert the word obituaries for garage sales and go on our way. But when we did our research, we discovered that funeral homes such as Greg, funeral directors, as he expressed, on average, 30% of the time, they were asked by families to place an obit in another market. And so that became the evolution of what we created. But we are also dedicated to keeping newspapers relevant to Greg's process, to keep Greg placing obits in newspapers. So you need to make that easy for them, because they don't have a lot of time and willingness to do this unless it's incredibly simple. So, back in the day of conferences, we used to attend national and regional conferences. I'm wearing a dress for the first time in over a year. I just got excited to, dress up like I was going to go someplace to my office. And so in attending those conferences, we really were hands-on with the funeral director partners. They're very fun conferences. You should go when they happen again. And many of our product enhancements and line extensions really were created because of the needs that they express. But a final point there is that the local media consortium endorsed memoriams for obituary placement because in 2020, a very difficult year, obviously, for obituaries, or sadly, a good year for obituaries. I don't want to look at it that way. We delivered over $9 million in incremental revenues to the newspaper industry. That was above and beyond the average 30% local revenue increase. $9 million to these papers that are part of our network from obituaries that were coming from out of area. So the extension and the ease has an extraordinary benefit to the industry as a whole.
We got some questions that are rolling in, and I don't know. Richard is asking, what's the difference between an obit and a death notice? I mean, is there a difference, and what's the distinction between the traditional obit and a death notice? Maybe Deb, you can help us with that. Well,
so vernacular is so interesting. Some people call them tributes, some people call them obits, some people call them death notices. Traditionally, a death notice is a shorter notice and often free, and free is free with us. If someone is offering a package that is free, there is no service fee. That we have a Ticketmaster-like service fee that's added to the original package price of the obit, which is paid by the family, and so that pays for things. But a death notice is traditionally something that's free. A lot of newspapers, particularly smaller newspapers that are, well, all newspapers are concerned about the editorial content, but we work with you to shorten the amount of information that you're giving away for free. And then the obituary or the celebration of life or life tributes. I mean, everybody's got a different name for the longer notice, right, Greg? And so that's the longer stuff. But what we're seeing, just an interesting point, is I remember calling on a funeral director with a publisher several years ago who was introducing the fact to the funeral director that they were going to be going to this platform. They were going to be freeing up some of the rigidity of their editorial requirements. And so the funeral director said to the publisher, Well, does that mean that I can now say passed away into the loving arms of Jesus instead of died on?
I'm sorry.
And the publisher thought about it and he was like, yeah. And the funeral director said, well, good, you'll make more money.
Gregory, is this an issue, the terminology and the length? So, I mean, when you're dealing with this, or what's your perspective because you're really dealing with the family during this time?
And it, again, it goes back to what they want. If they just want a notice announcing the death, it's a death notice. And it basically is that. It just says, so-and-so passed away on this date, services, date, and time. And that's the end of it.
Okay.
An obituary is much more, it's what they want. At that point, it's as sit down and it's as custom as they want to make it.
I do remember that they crafted the message for me, at least from my dad. They helped me through it. So you have to almost be an expert, Greg, at, correct me if I'm wrong, and you have to be a writer.
Funeral directors have so many titles upon them, names. I mean, there's different things that we do, and yes, writer, editor. We could be called, we might even get into a little bit of exaggerating and things like that. But we do a lot of things. But yes, that's one of them. Is we take bullet points that they give us, which would be survivors and what mom or dad was involved in the community, the churches they were members of, and we sit down and put that information into an obit, into a format, and we normally will share it back to them and let them proof it, and then it goes out.
We in the industry have a tendency sometimes to not really understand some of our advertiser categories. It's amazing that I don't know how many, Deb, okay, let me go back to Eric. You've been doing this for 35 years. How many newspaper companies, in your opinion, understand Greg's world? But see, the problem with our industry, Greg, is we were so automatic for so many years before there was the internet, that if you wanted to sell a car, the newspaper; wanted to sell a home, the newspaper; wanted to get a job, the newspaper. And by the way, if someone dies or gets married, and so it was more like a call center thing. Greg, you look too young to remember those days. So
not as young as I look.
And now it's.
Eric and I have been doing this about the same length of time. I've got 35 years as funeral director.
All right, so you remember the days where it was more or less just getting through the call center and just getting it in.
I can take you down a trilogy. I have done just flat dictation.
Yes.
I have done dictaphone. I've done AdStar. I've done. I mean, there's just a numerous email, obviously. But I've not found anything that's as easy as what I'm using now. And if this goes away or something happens to it, backing up is not going to be any fun. I promise you that.
Eric, I'm going to give you a chance now because you've been around for a while. You've got a senior management position at a big, successful media company. I love your company. I just love the fact that you guys have some ink in your veins and you actually care about content. You're not stripping newsrooms, and I won't mention any names. In your opinion, evangelize. How important is it that we maintain these relationships with the funeral homes? How important is it, in your humble opinion, you got a big audience right now, for us to do this, not just to make money? I mean, Deb made it clear there's money there, and we're not communists, but let's be honest, we're here. Is this something that's critical for us to maintain so we don't watch it go by the wayside like jobs, homes, and cars over the years?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that we often spend a lot of time on our sales teams talking about, fostering relationships with car dealers and real estate brokers, and those folks who are kind of in those major tentpole industries that have supported newspapers for so long. And, car dealers are great, but, we know that they're mercurial. They could wake up one day and, decide to change their entire mix and, everything, they're canceling today, they're ordering tomorrow. I think we really do as an industry need to pay as much attention to funeral home directors and funeral homes in this category, because that is going to be a continuum as we go forward. I think the big threat that we have here is not, a loss of relationship with funeral homes. I think that they're going to want to sustain that relationship in the business as well. I think it's really this kind of apathetic sense from people in our communities who just go, it's not really that important. I can post it on Facebook and I'll be fine. People will know. But again, I go back to the historical importance of what newspapers and funeral homes do in the community. It really sets it makes permanent the the life of those people who lived in that community. I mean, Gray's got a really important job. He has to deal with dignity and respect and really difficult situations with these families. And I think at the end of the day, 100 years from now, people aren't going to, well, if Facebook exists, I mean, who knows where it will be in the ether. But, if somebody wants to find their relative who lived or died in a particular area, they're going to look at libraries. They're going to look for the newspaper. I mean, they won't look at the TV stations, and who knows what, the internet will be like then. So I think there really needs to be kind of this strengthening of that partnership between funeral home directors and newspapers to say, look, these are two key critical areas that, 100 years from now, 200 years from now, people will continue to rely on. Otherwise, I mean, I know I've got family members of mine who do a lot of family research, and they're always going back to newspapers, and they're always going to libraries and microfilm and kind of those historical things. If that happens 100 years from now, I mean, what are we as a society if we can't actually recognize and kind of commemorate those that came before us? And I think that that's an important role for newspapers. And we need to, I think, like you said, Mike, there's a certain degree that it just kind of happens and it comes in, and we kind of take for granted the fact that these obits come in. We really can't do that. I think that, and again, one of the things that Memoriams has helped us do is foster a really positive relationship with funeral homes, engage them in two-way communication. Are you getting what you need? Are we providing you with the things that you need to serve your clients? And that serves us all ultimately.
Bruce, I'm going to let you have a moment now to, because you've been in the industry for a while as well. How important is this for us, not just your operation, but for the industry as a whole, to not let this go by the wayside like Craigslist? You know what I mean? That we have to, we are a place that is relied on. And if we just let the ethos continue, we could lose this.
I think, I think Eric hit the nail on the head, and I feel like my career has come full circle because I started in the newsroom as an obit writer. So
Really?
literally writing news obits and taking the paid obits and confirming deaths and so forth. I learned pretty early on that you better get that information right in the obituary, because even today the families cut it out. They save it, they laminate it, they put it in a scrapbook, they put it up on the fridge. You can't do that with a website. And so having it in print, I think it creates that permanency it's like a public notice. I think Eric said that. It's like a public notice. It creates that permanency. Readers stumble across things in print, whereas online you have to go search for them. If I'm reading the newspaper, I'm going to see the obits. Online, I've got to search for the obits. So I think that permanency is really important, and just in terms of creating kind of the historic record of a community. And really, that's what we're all about. We're about connecting our communities and providing that kind of critical community information that people need. Yes, a lot of people get it online, but there's still a lot of people who rely on the print products. And I think this is absolutely critical, and it is critical to maintain those relationships. And to help the funeral home directors explain to the families why the obituary might be important, even just as a short one.
There's a lot of chatter going on in our chat room, Deb, about call centers. And the reason I'm using you as our expert is you're pollinating to all the different newspaper groups. You're talking to everybody in this space. Is there still a way to phone this in to someone who doesn't want to do it this way? I mean, is that still available in most places?
Oh, absolutely. So some newspapers, because they have such a small percentage of private party placement, they don't necessarily want to get involved in setting up the private party tool. So we do have a call center account that we can set up for them. And then they simply enter the information into the call center account. That gives the exact fonts and styles, everything. It gives them the preview and InDesign. And then all of the processes, whether they're flowing the obit for search to Legacy or Town News or to the We Remember search, all of the same processes occur from there. All of their same billing processes will in play. And then one of the fun things is that Greg knows we offer a loyalty program for funeral directors when they place obituaries through Memoriams. And that's a points-based loyalty program where they get all kinds of fun prizes like iPads and gift cards and things, but we also have that for call centers to appreciate their efforts in entering the obits. And so if they need to do that, then they get points too, although we're not trying to encourage the use of that and not encourage the use of memoriams, but they appreciate that. And then one of our recommendations, however, is that the call center price be made about $25 higher than the price through the web. That's money that the newspaper keeps, and it just helps pay for the process. And on the private party side, often most of our media partners are validating that an actual death has occurred, so that helps, pay for that additional phone call that they need to make. So there is that process built in, but private party using the tool is obviously
Mike, do you mind if I jump in really quickly? I just want to kind of camp on Deb's comment. One of the things, and this is a little bit kind of in the weeds and nerdy like you referred to earlier, but one of the things that Adpay's really helped us out with is internal streamlining of our obituary workflow. So, the online mechanics, and having built one of these way back, getting the H&Js and the alignment and the rates to match up is really hard. Theirs works incredibly well. We have a center in Montana that produces 20 or so newspapers up there in one place. All of the obituaries come quote unquote camera ready, right? Ready for pagination. They go straight to pagination. We have all the information that goes into our billing system. So we try to push as many of these obituaries through the memoriams tool just because it maintains consistency of workflow. Otherwise, we have them coming in from different directions. So Adpay's been fantastic about making sure that we can have consistency of workflow, consistency of product, so that way it doesn't create pain points in our production process, which has been fantastic.
Bruce, you're nodding your head through this. You're having similar success with call in versus it having it all just kind of paginate perfectly and just flow?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have one classified advertising person who's putting together classified pages and obit pages for the entire company. Wow. So to just have the obits come in, electronically, and her not have to take them over the phone and try to paginate them herself, all she has to do is drop them into our format, and they're ready, and occasionally make an adjustment so they fit into a column, and they're ready to go. And so that's incredibly helpful and a big time saver for us. It allows her to focus on other categories, where she can do some selling.
And which is important. And does this person also try to go out there and at least get on the phone with the funeral homes, do a little evangelizing for you as well?
She will, and she'll work, and she's available. We make her phone number and email address available. So anybody who goes online and tries to place an obit and runs into a problem or a question or an issue, she'll help them out. So we're not totally hands off.
Greg, I want to ask you a question. I have gone into hundreds and hundreds of newspaper markets over the past 20 years, providing what we call educational seminars. And sometimes it's just any small business can attend, but many times it's category specific. One category where I'm constantly invited to go speak to an entire group is the real estate. We call that a vertical or type of category of businesses, because the realtor community in a town tends to train together. They belong to an association together. They know each other, even though they're highly competitive. They're fighting over listings every day. They still hold hands and sing Kumbaya and go to common trainings. I can't get 3 car dealers to go to the same meeting because they're highly competitive. The automotive industry. How competitive is your industry? You've had a few years under your belt. Do you work with other companies, other funeral homes? Do you guys belong to an association, or is it kind of just? Tell us a little bit more about how the local industry works, if you don't mind, sir.
Well, it is obviously competitive, but we don't have competitors. We have colleagues.
Colleagues, okay.
So well, we don't trash our competitors. We talk about our colleagues. So it is, we try to do what we need to care for our families. And you do have people that, they shop, and, you're doing your best to, bring those folks into your store. We are a part of a larger group. There's about 2,800 of us scattered across the United States and Puerto Rico, Canada. So Dignity is a a larger organization that we are part of, and so we all tend to use this. It is something that makes life easier for everybody, and it's something that I kind of stumbled upon accidentally, but I'm glad I did.
I constantly have to educate. I educate, sales train the local ad representatives on who the target audience is. For example, a huge industry right now is home healthcare, and of course, aging services. And the decision maker, you're looking at him, the baby boomer, right? Me.
Right.
The guy in, is that the same decision maker in your category? When you find that
Absolutely.
someone's coming in, I know it's all over the place at certain times in tragedy, but is it normally when you need to market yourself and get your features and benefits out to the community, so they pick you over your colleague, if I may use that term?
Well,
is that your target audience?
The baby boomer wave has begun.
Yes.
We are very busy with COVID. That in the last year has pushed us to the point that stress is, that's just a word now. It's not anything other than that. We've moved beyond that. But we see that we are moving into that wave that we've heard about for the last 20 years, that when
Right.
baby boomers start transitioning, that there's going to come a wave that we're not going to be able to keep up. Well, COVID may have pushed that up just a little bit. So we think we are starting to see the wave of baby boomers starting to transition, and anything that we can use that helps make our life easier, I'm all part of. It makes life simpler, but at the same time, I'm giving people the product that they want. It's all about them getting what they want, and you're the go-between between a family and a newspaper.
Right.
And whenever you're putting that together, you want to give them what they want, but you need to do it in the format that the newspaper wants, and you're making life simpler and it's more streamlined for everybody. That's the easiest way to put it. It's just easy.
This is fascinating, and we really appreciate having you here, Greg, because you've been able to truly give us a perspective on the advertiser side. I've only got 3 minutes left now, Deb. We want to bring this whole thing home. I see you're fielding a lot of questions in the chat room. Are you Deb, on how the relationship between your company and the media company operates? Why don't you give us a quick 2 minutes on how simple it is, and as you said, there's no cost, right? I mean, for the funeral home or the media company to participate in the network, correct?
Absolutely. And one of the things that I really want to point out, there was a great question about the relationship with the funeral homes, and do we create that relationship? And I really want to point out that this is the media partner's relationship with the funeral home. Greg has a relationship with the folks at SCNI, with Gwinnett, with AJC. And what we are doing is we are working with you to help that relationship by creating a streamlined process to make business easier for your partner, the funeral director. So we are in no way trying to disintermediate that relationship, and we very much are just positioned to help support the evolving needs in the space. So that's really, really important. The process for getting started, we have a lot of best practices, we have a lot of recommendations. We're actually getting much better at being parents, perhaps, by saying this really is the way you need to do it. In the beginning, we had to evolve those best practices, but now we know. And so I know that Bruce and Eric's company have looked to us to say, okay, this is what we know works well. Eric is they're doing newsletters, and we're sending them a link that they can embed in their newsletter. So there are all kinds of new opportunities. We have partner sites that are doing fully paginated sections at the end of the year that we're helping with too, or quarterly. So what the business needs are what we work towards, and so nothing about this is cookie cutter per se, but it is highly replicable, and so we've learned. Bruce said we've been doing this. He learned about it at the local media consortium meeting back in 2013, and he's been doing it since then. And we just are really dedicated to helping our media partners succeed, but also learning from them and understanding what we need to do to evolve in the space.
If you look at the chat room, I did not pay for this question, Deb, but let's say our newspaper isn't in your network. How can we go? Give out your email address right now, if you don't mind.
So ddt@adpay.com. I'm the banned pesticide. And so there's two ways that media partners can participate. One is as a network partner. So essentially that is just, you can be in the network. You don't have to do all the bells and whistles. We can configure you to receive obits from out of area, absolutely no cost to you, or you can take advantage of the full program to realize the local revenue increases and the funeral home strategic partnership components of this to simplify your processes and
what Bruce and what Bruce and Eric mentioned, also the pagination and everything is just so simple, ready to go. There's also a form you can fill out, adpay.com/contact-adpay. I want to thank our panel. Bruce, stay healthy, stay well in suburban Washington, and try to avoid all the bureaucracy down there if you can. Eric, thanks for getting up early for us. My best to Nick Monaco, my close friend and the great company you work for. But Greg, I really want to thank you for your perspective today. I mean, it's just an honor to have someone that we need to service more, one of our customers on board. And Greg, your perspective has been very, very valuable. Deb, you and I will cross paths post-COVID, I'm sure, CERN. Sure, I want to thank everyone who attended as well. We'll be doing another one of these in just a couple of weeks, so stay tuned to editor and publisher for our webinar series. Thanks, panel. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate
you all for being part of this today. Take care now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You give